So I'm David Perlman. I'm a senior lecturer at Penn School of Nursing. I'm also an associate at the Center for Bioethics there. I'm a fellow and visiting professor at University of the Sciences. And even though Anita did say that there were no conflicts of interest, I do like to disclose that I also have a small business on the side. I'm not here for that purpose. I'm here to share some free resources that are grant funded through Penn Nursing that you may want to utilize, as well as give you some sort of nuts and bolts recommendations on easy, well, what I consider easy. There was a bit of debate last time. I'm assuming that people have rudimentary skills in how to use computers. I know some people are more technologically challenged. But I will be talking about some resources that you yourself can utilize to have a very nice ethics education program for your ethics community, as well as provide you with some free resources that you might want to use. So with that in mind, that's essentially what we're going to do. Those are the objectives. I'm going to mention some recommendations about whether you should have a formal program, how you should do continuing education. The talk itself is going to be about half an hour, so I can leave adequate time for your questions, concerns. I want to get some dialogue going. So let's just jump right into it. Training ethics community members remains a huge challenge. I don't think I have to, I'm preaching to the choir, literally. The few studies that have been done show that ethics committees either lack adequate training to do the jobs they're expected to do, not through any fault of their own, but through usually lack of resources. They're all very well-intentioned people who want to do good by the professionals and patients they serve. And there's also great variability in the approaches that are used. The last session, we talked about how on the research ethics side, there is sort of a somewhat standard kind of introductory ethics training that exists for research ethics. And wouldn't it be nice if there was something on the clinical ethics side? Well, I'm here to tell you I have 14 podcasts that'll do the trick for you. So not that I'm the gold standard, but they're out there. They're there for you, for people to use. As a shout out to Anita and Diane, who are your conference organizers, they are in the literature on this very topic, albeit somewhat about a decade ago. So there's nothing new here. The other study that I really like to cite is this very nice one that was done by the Veterans Administration. We've heard a lot about these guys today. They have invested heavily in their ethics resources, and they're all open source currently because it's the government. Government cannot sort of copyright things. They can't by law. Well, I guess they can, but they can't charge for them, or whatever. But the important point, which you can't see because my screen is so small, is that this study found that only 41% of the people nationally that they surveyed who do ethics consultations had any formal training. 41%. Pretty astounding figure. That's also right around the same percentage of nurses and social workers that have received some kind of formal ethics education. Interesting. So, we obviously have some ethics education needs. So, given that it's a challenge, given that we know sort of that it's not being done properly, or not adequately, or not funded well enough, or whatever the issue might be, how do we overcome it? Couple that with the fact that sometimes we have the perception that ethics committees are in fact not the important committees. So, I actually don't think this is the case. Certainly people, oh, I'm sorry, it says ethics committee, dictionary. A committee made up of 12 people who for some reason didn't get picked to serve on the important committees. I know, it's terrible, but that's the perception. That either ethics is not important or you're playing a police function, which we're debunking that mythology, which is a good thing. What? Right, and you don't want to, that's compliance's job. We're shifting over to compliance. Let them be the no people. We'll be the yes but. Or, as my rabbi says, it depends. It depends on meeting the challenge for ethics committees on what your committee's charge is. Do you have all 4 charges? Or 5 now? We've added quality as a charge. What's your structure within your larger institution? Are you a medical staff committee? Do you report to the board of directors? In one very famous case, my former professor, she reported to the Department of Public Relations. Isn't that interesting for an ethicist? Yeah, she was like, What's your budget and resources? Right, the big whopping 0. I don't do this. I don't do this because in some cultures that's profanity. I learned that the hard way. No, it's okay. And Italy, I did this, thinking it was okay. No, this is 0. So the guy gave me this delicious thing, and the chef was back there, and he was like, "How was it?" I went, and he was like, "You gave it a 0?" What I didn't know, this is actually the correct thing to do in Tuscany. I don't know what that means, but it means that was delicious. For me as a kid, this is duh. So these are some interesting intercultural things. We're off topic now. I'm going to get back on topic. The other thing you need to know, I'm very well caffeinated, is what expertise does your committee have? Use the gold that's in your committee. So as I said, it all depends on what the charges are. We're going to go through each of these, and education is important on all fronts. But what we're going to do is then discuss how can you accomplish an ethics education training program for your members, and then what kinds of things do you want to train on. So the other thing that's really important, and I sort of stole her thunder without really knowing it because I'm last, but if your committee interfaces with other ethics-related services at the institution, that also could be very important. If you work with the research ethics people or the organizational ethics and compliance people, whoever it is that you sort of work with. So let's talk about these charges. If you're doing education, and by this I mean education of others, not yourselves, you have to be masters. You have no business going out and educating others if you yourself do not have the requisite skills and abilities and knowledge to do so. But unfortunately, we have no way to test that. The field has said we're not going to issue standards. Tomorrow, if you'd like to hang out at Shingle as an ethics consultant on your own, good luck making any money, but you're free to do so because there are no certification or accreditation standards yet. I see this as an up-and-coming thing. Here's my recommendation. One person at the least, or some combination of these things, should appear within the committee structure or the committee membership. Someone should at least have some kind of formal chops, as we say, in bioethics. Someone should have some type of training, whether it be as a physician, as a nurse, as a PhD, as a lawyer, as a theologian, as a social worker, some type of formal education, whether it be going to the Georgetown intensive course, whether going to take Penn's master's program, whether doing the online program that's available wherever. Someone should have some kind of formal education. It could be one person, but someone who's in touch with the field and can bring those things back to your committee. You don't want to have a committee that's sort of isolated from the field, because you're going to have what we like to call failure to thrive. Some commitment to continuing education, so you have to be willing to read the literature, go to conferences, participate in online forums. There's multiple ways you can get sort of continuing education. Talking amongst yourselves, going to these kinds of conferences is a wonderful thing. If you're going to be an instructor, if you're going to teach other people, you've got to have skills in adult learning theory, how to deliver things, multimodal learning. If I see anyone here fall asleep, is it because I'm boring? Is it because I'm not doing enough moving around so your eyes have to track me? Or is it because you just had lunch about an hour ago and you're getting that sugar? So what is it? So you really have to be an effective teacher. You have to be willing to put forward your knowledge in the service of others. You also have to have some experience in bioethics in some fashion. Maybe you've shadowed somebody, you've thought about these issues on your own, you've written a paper, or whatever it is. And you have to be knowledgeable about what your institutional context is. We were just talking about the proactive ethics consultation, and I'm familiar with several of those studies, and if you were to try to implement those at your institution, would they work? What if you get different results than these people who found that length of stay decreased by 1.2 days if you have a proactive ethics consultation 72 hours post-admission to the medical ICU? That's wonderful. And everyone thought, well, this is great, we should implement this. Will your administration back you up implementing it if your results show that in fact you double the length of stay and you increase money and don't decrease it, but the patients really get value out of it? Institutional context can be very, very important. If your charge is policy development, you have to have the same type of skills, but in a different way. You still have to have that core knowledge. And I'm going to give you 14 podcasts that will give you at least a smattering of that core knowledge. You also have to know, how does policy really get made at your institution? Is there one or two people in a certain office who wink, wink, nod, nod? If you don't have their approval, you can forget it. How does your institution really work? If you do clinical ethics consultation, bedside consultation, add to that all the things you've seen thus far, and know that the process skills are just as important. So if you've had the mediation training that was done right before, great. If you have seen yourself on tape giving an ethics consultation, that's great. If you've been mentored through the process, that's also good. I actually am very biased towards mediation. I want to come forward and say that. I did a doctoral dissertation about it. I was about a decade ahead of my time. When I was out there saying mediation could be a wonderful way of doing things, people were like, what the heck you're talking about? To which I respond, I think I've been exonerated. Some ability to manage those difficult conversations. How do you tell somebody that their loved one is not going to live? So there's an excellent book, Difficult Conversations. I highly recommend that. Maybe you've had training in giving the bad news through the Buckman stages. That's great. You need to have those kinds of skills to be able to deal with highly charged emotional situations. Patients who may get violent, you never can tell what's going to happen. And providers who are going to break down and cry. Your chief surgeon could break down and cry. I've seen it happen. The bigger they are, ASBH, our national association, sort of, for clinical ethics consultation. I say that because there's really nothing else, and they do a really good job of producing these kinds of resources. There's an education guide. As a matter of fact, I have a copy. It's in my bag. I'll have to wave it around in a few minutes. And there's also the new core competencies document. If you haven't seen these, you need to take a look at them. They're excellent. They represent the last 15 or 20 years of consensus among scholars and practitioners in the field who have really thought heavily about these issues. So get these and use these as resources. So, given that sort of background, given that you need to have mastery of these areas, how do we educate our own people? This is the challenge. There are different types of education. You can have formal training, you can get a degree, a certificate, online training, a master class, however, intensive course, but you also have to worry about the continuing education. So I'm here to tell you that there are a couple of things. I'm going to give you my prescription. And here's my prescription. Every committee should develop its own set of educational standards. What are you going to accept as someone who is worthy of wearing the badge that says Ethics Committee? Do you require some kind of mentorship period where they demonstrate knowledge, they go on consultations and observe, they do research for the committee, they do help out with policy? How is it that you're going to say you're now a full-fledged member of the Ethics Committee and you may go out and do consults or whatever it is that your committee is doing? Use those documents that are available. And I'm here to tell you, and I'm going to spend the rest of the talk talking about nuts and bolts, use the technology that's out there. How many of you are a little technophobic? Are we good in this audience? Because I had a couple of technophobes that were like, exactly, it takes time, just like anything else. It takes some time to learn. I'm going to show you a couple of things that I think are fairly easy that I was able to master pretty easily. And I think if I can do it, most of you should be able to do it as well. And the reason I want to go over these is because I don't know about you, most ethics committees I'm familiar with have a budget of 0. Unfunded mandate. Or they'll send the chair to a meeting, or they'll send you here, which is very nice. But in general, they don't have a sophisticated system of documenting their consultations. There's nothing like the VA has with EC Web, where you get a whole platform for doing things in ethics consultation. Maybe you don't even have a full-time staff ethicist. It's all sort of people of good intention who are volunteering. So that may be the case. So for that reason, I want to show you some very cost-effective ways to do this. As I said, substance and process, if you're doing consultation, very important. I have a list of 14 topic areas that I consider to be sort of the core areas of bioethics knowledge. If you don't know the difference between competence and capacity, if you don't know how to determine capacity, if you don't know the elements of the informed consent process, if you don't know that the doctrine of double effect. All these things that really help us quantify and help out with some of those really tough issues. And as I said, the process is also very important. I actually recommend for the informal, sure, you should try to do some formal training. Informally, you can develop some of your own mock cases and have some of your people practice. I am big on having practicing before your colleagues. Make your mistakes there in a friendly environment, so you can learn from them. How many of you have iPad 2s or iPhone 4s or some type of Droid device with a camera? There's no reason why you shouldn't be recording lectures and talks and each other doing consultations and receiving feedback. Those are pretty free kind of tools. I'm going to show you some stuff as well. Just to go back, I do have some of those cases already made with, they're juicy curveball cases that I give to my students. And they already have all the sort of parts laid out and how you have to play them. So if you'd like those resources, just send me an email. I'm happy to let you have those. Here's how you can use technology. You can use it for both the content as well as the organization of your ethics education program. Google allows not-for-profits to have a free website. It basically, I don't know I think it's like 20 gigabytes of stuff. I don't know what it is, to be honest. It's basically a wiki. How many of you have heard of Wikipedia? The idea behind a wiki is that it's an interactive set of pages that people subscribe to, and you give them permission to either read and edit, or read, edit, and own. And so you can actually have your subcommittee for your education on your committee set up such that they all subscribe to that one page. Anytime anyone loads a document up, they get an email saying, hey, there's a new document. The whole committee, you post your agenda for the meeting. Everyone on the committee, you can, hey, there's a new agenda for this meeting. So it's a nice way to keep track of documents. So utilize that ability. You saw Dr. Shavanowitz, he had an internal site that was SharePoint that took forever to develop. This you can do right after we're done here, as long as it complies with your IT policies. Don't take any recommendation I have outside the context of what your institution. I am free to do whatever I want because I really don't work on an ethics committee, and I can set up my own websites, lickety-split, but you may not be able to do that. So just definitely check. And if you do set one up, how many of you order books from Amazon? Why not get a referral fee for all the ordering you do? Set someone up as having ownership of your Amazon bookstore. When anyone on the committee wants to buy a book, send an email to that sort of webmaster. They'll put it up, send a link, buy the book, committee gets money. Not much, but it could be substantial. If you have a committee of 20 and you all need 2 or 3 books, or are interested in buying those 2 or 3 books, why not make $100, $200 off of Amazon's back? I do it. I tell my students that I'm doing that. I'm like, you can buy your book wherever you want. The bookstore has the book. If you're going to order from Amazon, however, would you please use this referral link so that my project can get some money so I can pay my interns or at least buy them lunch, which is how I do it. And I'll show you that. Content-wise, there are lecture capture tools out there that are very affordable and or free. There's no reason why you shouldn't mine your own gold. Let's say you have a psychiatrist on your committee. That person can tell you the ins and outs of determination of capacity that would be very useful for your committee. Why not have that person come give a short talk, you record them with your iPhone, and with $5 spent on iMovie, you've got it ready to roll up to the web on YouTube for your committee. Why not? I do it. Upload articles according to fair use provisions. Documents, agendas, minutes, consultation notes, all of that stuff so that you can provide that institutional memory for the next group that's going to come along in 5-10 years, so that you have a history. I was mentioning, I did part of my training at the Medical University of South Carolina, and we had several terrible things go wrong in our institution, namely all of our funding yanked because someone in OBGYN thought it would be really good to test babies as a surrogate of mothers for cocaine, and then hand that right over to the prosecutor without telling the women. And it just so happened they were 41 people had that done, 40 were African American. Not too kosher. So maybe you heard about that little thing. Anyways, without that kind of institutional thing. What's your name? What year were you there?
I was a key person and finished in 2009.
Okay, we wouldn't have run across each other, but
no, that was I think I heard that story with you.
yep. And if you didn't have that knowledge on your pediatrics rotation, if someone said, "Can we test this baby?" They might have said, "Whoa, you can't do that."
I think that's exactly the context in which it came.
Exactly.
Which it came up.
So, institutional memory can be very, very important, especially, in ethics. Someone has to know what happened before, and what's really going on there. The wink, wink, nod, nod. So I always feel it's better to show than it is to tell. I have this website, www.bioethics2.net, and you need the www. Google does not like what they call naked domains. Bioethics2.net won't get you there. Use that www. So anyways, I have a series of 14 podcasts that are available via iTunes University, as well as YouTube, because some people don't like using iTunes or don't have iPhones or iPods. They're freely available. They were funded through the University of Pennsylvania. I originally made them for my nursing students so that they would have some type of resource when they graduated as a refresher. Because I was appalled, 41% of nurses, social workers, what other word? I forget. What's that? No. I don't know what their number is, but 41% of nurses and social workers did not have a formal ethics, as part of their degree training. Penn requires it.
Yeah.
It's changing. It really is. The new generation of physicians in training, I can tell you, definitely have more awareness of these issues. Nevertheless, I made these resources available. They're just as applicable to ethics committee people. You have to know the same core knowledge. The only one that you may not really be interested in, unless you're a nurse, is the one on ethical responsibilities of nurses. But let me show you. It's better to show than it is to tell. Unfortunately, this screen is a little small. I was hoping that it would be nice and big and projected. But I've actually done a free screencast of my website, a little tour for you to show you how easy it is. I did it yesterday at my kitchen table with this laptop while my cats were in the background. You may hear one of them meow. But as long as you don't mind those kinds of things, you can do these kinds of things too. I do have a full high-quality, CD-quality podcast booth available to me, which I do use for my more professional stuff. But I wanted to show you that at your kitchen table, you too can be engaged in ethics education. So here it is. Since it's better to show than it is to tell, here's a very quick screener podcast recording that you can do free of charge. Here's a brief tour of my Bioethics 2.0 podcast website. As you can see, it captures whatever's on the screen, and as an example, I'm going to show you a couple of things about the website. The first is that I mentioned earlier in the lecture that you could include a bookstore if you have a website for your ethics committee. And here's an example of the bookstore that I've created for this website. So anytime a student needs to buy a book for a class, we send them out this link. And when the student purchases a book, we get a small referral fee. And you can use that for whatever purposes you deem necessary for education for your ethics committee. As an example, here's a listing of a couple of books that are by faculty that I work with. There's, these are textbooks, and even if you have your own books, you can put them up. Here's an example of 2 books that I have on the Kindle platform that I put up here that people can buy. But the real issue is I want to show you what the podcasts can do and what you can do with a free website and free screen recording. So I'm going to take you right into the actual episode guide, and you can see that there are 14 different podcasts that you can access. And they're available as YouTube videos as well as iTunes University podcasts. And here's an example of what it looks like off the website, hosted directly from YouTube. So all you would do is click this button, and you would get the episode to play right within your web browser. Here's an example.
Introduction to Ethical Theories. At the end of this podcast, you should.
That's just an illustrative example.
And that's just an example. I'll pause it now. And it would look very much the same when you do it within
iTunes University. Here's the landing page, and all you have to do is view it in iTunes, and they're all free of charge, and people are welcome to use them however they wish. So that concludes a very brief demonstration of what's possible with a free screen recording tool, use of a free Google website, and referral from Amazon's bookstore.
Imagine doing your own podcasts for free. It's actually not that difficult. A little bit of time, a little bit of learning, you too can become a master.
Since it's better to show than it is to tell.
You don't want to see that again. All right, so here are some examples of some things you can do with these open source, free, or very inexpensive technologies. Lecture capture. Record how you document your consultations. Let's say you have an evaluation form, slap it up on a screen, use the screen recording. That way you have a little mini podcast so that new people, when they're like, how do I document da-da-da-da-da, boom, they've got a little screencast that they can reference. Record didactic sessions that apply specifically to your institution. Maybe you have a legal representative who can come give you an overview of what laws really apply in your state or county or whatever. That would be very helpful for the ethics community to know. I've included something on health law, but it has to be very, very general because I don't know who's going to access my podcast. So I go over sort of the classic cases, the big ones. Excuse me. If you have an iPhone, if you have an iPad 2, with $5, you can have instant, very sophisticated editing capabilities of high-definition video. If you have an Android or a Palm OS device or a Windows device that usually has a high-definition camera, you can do the lecture capture fairly easily there. I did all of my students' recording of their role plays with my iPad 2 and my Android phone, and the students were like, whoa, I really need to put less. Really, it was high definition. Record those guest speakers that you do invite. I'm always like, whenever I go give a lecture, I'm like, who's recording it? Do you want a copy of this? How, why aren't you recording this? People have paid a lot of money to be here. Wouldn't they like to refer back to it or maybe put it up on the website? Record your mock consultation sessions so that you can become a more experienced ethics consultant. I don't know how many of you have ever seen yourselves on camera, but you'd be surprised what your body language is like when in the middle of doing a consultation. Sometimes, it's either very cold. See that? It's cold, isn't it? It's not that she's a closed person and doesn't want to talk. It's because it's a little chilly. But sometimes you can really tell someone's got a stern look. You can see the fire in their eyes. So you can really get a lot of training on the process side of ethics consultation by recording yourselves in mock consultations. Obviously, you don't want to do it with real patients for confidentiality reasons, all of those kinds of things. Use that free Google site. If you're a not-for-profit organization, I think you get an unlimited number of free websites. You just basically need to know how to press a couple of buttons and enter text. Really, that's legitimately how it is. I'm not a programmer, and I have built a multitude of wikis for handling things, collaborations I do with colleagues on grants. The Bioethics 2 website is all a Google website, hosted directly on Google servers, accessible off of any web browser in the world, including direct links to those YouTube videos. It's really kind of an amazing tool what you can do. So using that free site, you can host all of the things I've mentioned, free of charge, and you can integrate other products. How many of you use Dropbox? How many of you don't know what Dropbox is? How many of you use thumb drives? How many of you lose thumb drives and hate having to carry them around? How many of you would like to have a thumb drive that stays with you regardless of where you are in the world? They give you 2 gigabytes for free.
It's a Google?
No, it's a Dropbox. I'll show you how to do that. The nice thing is if you have a .edu email address, you get double the space. And this isn't a conflict at all, I assure you. If I refer you, I get a little bit more space and so do you. So if you're interested, send me an email and we'll work on it. But imagine having a 2 gigabyte, or in some cases 4, thumb drive that you never have to worry about losing. Accessible off of any device that you have, whether it be a laptop, an iPad, a phone, any web browser in the world. You lose that document while you're at a conference, You didn't bring your laptop? Boom, there it is. All you have to have is an internet connection. It's kind of nice. That's what we call cloud computing.
You say, my son just finished 7th grade. He's been using the Google Docs since 6th grade. So hearing stuff
Hire that kid on your ethics committee. Seriously.
He can set up the website for me.
Pay him in Skittles. The way things are going, we're not going to have hard disks. In 5 years, hard disks are going to be passe. Everything's going to be cloud-based computing. And in 10 years, of course, we're going to have head jacks or antennas that are going to hook us right to the net. Or tails like Avatar. That would be kind of cool, actually. I'm all in favor of that technology integration. What happened? I think
badly of technology.
No, I think it's because I said too much. So as I said, lecture capture could be very important. ScreenR.com. I think it allows you 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, something like that, but it's a free screen recording tool, cross-platform. I used it to show you that little introduction. It captures whatever's on your screen, so make sure that there aren't pictures that you don't want people to see of you vacationing in the Bahamas, whatever it is. As I tell my students, it's kind of funny. At first I show up for class and I start naming names, first day, and it's because they give me a list and I do my research. But I tell them, I've already Facebooked all of you. I know what you did last weekend, and they're like, I say, be careful what you put on my Facebook. Profcast. This is actually the software I'm using right now to capture this lecture. Cost me $30. It was a pretty good investment. And you can use it on Mac or PC, although Mac works better. And it synchronizes your PowerPoint presentations with the audio. So I'll have a full podcast at the end of this talk that I'll post up on the website. And you can access it at will. And if you work with iTunes directly, you can just publish it directly to iTunes. That's a little more complicated. That's sort of the nuts and bolts of what I have for you. I'd like to tail off right now and ask what questions you have, what else I can show you. Some people said, show me Dropbox. I can do that, connected to the net. Some people have all kinds of other questions. Some people are ashamed that it's called the shame spiral. That's what Anita calls it. Every time I give a presentation, it's like, I know so little about technology. And I'm like, it's fun. It's good. So, all right, I see a first question. My email address, which one do you want? I have like 5 different ones. I will give you my personal one, because I check it religiously. It's D Perlman, no A in there, no extra E either. That one's worth a lot of pen. DPERLMAN. Actually, you know what? It's just easier if I show you the first slide. I should have just repeated the first slide at the last slide. Come on. There I am. So you can reach me at d.perlman@usp.edu. That's fine. Or my PIN address, or my personal one, which is DPERLMAN002. I am a secret agent at yahoo.com. And I give you a card, which will make it really easy. Whichever. They all come to my iPad. If you'd like to get me through pen, that's fine. If you like me through USciences, that's fine. If you wanted me to give you a card, I can give you a card. It's all good. You can Google me. You guys Google each other, don't you? Sure. If I had a daughter, I wouldn't let her go on any date without Googling her boyfriend. I'm on tape with that. Google is now turned into a verb. What other questions do you have? I saw you and then you.
So, how do you keep current? I mean, does UPenn help you? Yeah. I mean, should I be subscribing to a magazine? Because my IT department's way ahead.
All right. If you take the numeral 2 off the website, that's probably one of the best bioethics websites in the world, bioethics.net. That's the home landing page of the American Journal of Bioethics. They have a blog. It's not really kept great right now. I want someone to do some guest blogging for them. But there's all kinds of resources there. The VA's website is also very good. If you just Google VA bioethics, a good website will come up.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, I was meaning literally, how do you keep up with cloud technology?
Oh.
These applications.
It's a hobby, so we're mind your goal. I mean, Anita asked me for technology advice. All my friends come to me and say, "I'm thinking of getting this, this, and this," and I'm like, "No, you want this." And, of course, I do a lot of assessing. I don't tell them what they need, but I'm really of the opinion that technology should solve more problems than it creates. So if you start, I had to give back several phones because they just were not cooperative. I tried to hack them and they would not hack. And I was like, that phone's going back. So I go through a lot of phones to my wife's chagrin. Let's see. So if you have technology savvy friends, if you've got the 10-year-old,
Yeah, get a-
that is a cottage industry for 10-year-olds. Put them to work. There's actually a wonderful technology learning website called lynda.com, lynda.com, and I think they have a whole series of free podcasts on how to do various and sundry things. lynda.com, I believe. I can actually try to pull it up. Sure, I'm going to end our recording.